Hey now, and welcome to the City Off Campus podcast with your two favorite hosts, Sammy Sommerfeld and Jack McFarland. We've got a special guest today. We've got former Chicago Bears long snapper Patrick Mannelly on the show today. How's everything going with you?
Everything's good, man. The Bears are 5-1. It makes it a lot easier to talk about back in Chicago, and life is good, man. I mean, other than what we're going through with this darn COVID stuff, I can't complain.
Yeah, definitely. So my first question for you is, how did you start playing long snapper and what drew you to the position?
Yeah, okay. So I have a brother who's 5 years older, and he played football at Notre Dame from 1988 to 1992. And I kind of took a hiatus off of football or away from football my sixth and seventh grade year. So he came back that summer going into his sophomore year. And it was about him. He wanted to learn how to long snap because at Notre Dame that time, they just came off the national championship year in 1988. They had a bunch of great players there. And he was like, all right, if I can learn how to long snap, maybe I can get on the field a little quicker. So we were out in the front yard, working with my brother Bernard of how to long snap. And he's like, all right, here, kid, brother, you try to do this thing. And I did. I grabbed the ball and just kind of turned it upside down and snapped it back there. And he looked at me like, that's pretty good. So from then on, I just took kind of pride in wanting to be the long snapper for the 8th grade year, 9th grade year, 10th grade year and on. But I owe a lot to my brother who kind of brought it to me. And a neat story behind it is at my high school, a bunch of the Atlanta Falcons coaches' kids went to our high school. So there wasn't much information out there about how to long snap. So Rod Dowhauer, I think was the offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach or whatever he was with the Falcons at the time. His son went to Marist, my high school in Atlanta, and gave us a pamphlet of like how to long snap. It was literally like 2 pages, kind of like how to grip it, just the basics. And that's how I learned it. And then just, like I said, took pride in wanting to do it every year thereafter. And it turned into, what it did with the Bears. And, I went to Duke University. It was an offensive lineman, defensive lineman / one of those bigger athletes. And then had to do it my freshman year because this 5th-year senior got hurt. And I just, took a lot of pride in it and luckily got drafted for it.
So something I'm sure you figured out relatively quickly while being a long snapper is it's a lot like being an ump in the MLB. If you do your job, nobody really knows your name. But if you screw up, everybody knows your name.
That's a good way. I'm going to use that one. I'm stealing that one from you.
So what kind of pressure was that for you at the beginning of your long snapping career? And how did that pressure change throughout the entirety of your professional career?
What's weird is I get to ask that question. I think it's one thing I embraced it. Like I embraced the pressure. I enjoyed trying to be perfect. You can't be exactly perfect. We're doing our Zoom call here. So drawing a box is like trying to hit the box. I try to hit a big box to make my perfect a little bit bigger, within the punter's, framework or, from knees to nipples. Like I said, it was kind of my perfect, but I just kind of embraced that role. I embraced wanting to be that guy. And if I missed and if I was off for a little bit, I just was like, all right, I've got to make the next 10 to 11 to 12 perfect again. But that's just something I embraced and enjoyed doing and didn't mind not being noticed. That meant you were doing your job, like you said. So I had no problem with that.
And I'm sure doing the whole not getting noticed thing came secondhand with being an offensive lineman. Nobody really ever says anything good about them unless they mess up.
That's true. That's a good way to put it. We just had Bob Wiley on the, I do the radio show back in Chicago. Bob Wiley was the old offensive line coach, and he came up with the idea of the mushroom club. That's what O-linemen are, O-line coaches. They just put them in the dark. Nobody cares about them, and that's kind of what a long snapper is. And O-linemen are you're a mushroom. That's and that's something you just embrace as an O-lineman. Your unit of about 5 people as an O-lineman. As a long snapper, your own unit is 1, but you got to embrace it and enjoy it.
My next question for you is, what was the best or most meaningful snap you played in the NFL?
That's a good one. I mean, the most meaningful would have been my first one against the Jacksonville Jaguars, just because I made the NFL, was able to wear, a Bears uniform in a regular season game at home. But any game-winning kick was meaningful. All the ones that Robbie made were very meaningful. I think the one when we beat Seattle was very meaningful, but that wasn't my best snap, but Robbie made the kick. The other ones, I mean, it's hard to say one, but the most meaningful one, I'll just make it simple, was the first one in the NFL against the Jacksonville Jaguars in 1998.
Well, so
what do you remember from that?
Well, I'll give you a little story on that one too, because I remember looking at Todd Sauerbrunn, who was the punter, and thinking, holy shit. I'm in the NFL and I'm doing this. This is amazing. And it was kind of neat that I took that just split second to put myself in that situation and realize where I was.
So when you were coming in as a rookie long snapper, what were your expectations or goals starting your career? And at that point in time, where did you think your career was going to go?
My wife and I talk about this all the time. Let me give you a before that story. So I met my wife in college and was lucky enough to get drafted, but we started dating kind of my senior year. And she's like, what is a long snapper? And I was telling her I did that as well as playing offensive line. And then I told her I have a chance to go play in the NFL as a long snapper. And her thing was, that's a job. So she couldn't believe it. So it started out with just wanting to make the pros. I got drafted. I just wanted to make the team. You signed like a 3-year rookie deal. I just wanted to play the first year and then see where it took me. I was hoping to get, it's kind of a head start in life with the earning curve, with making NFL money early on. And then I didn't know it was going to last 16 years. I think everybody has a goal. Hey, I would love to play double digits. And that kind of became maybe a little bit of a reality in my mind, maybe after, or I guess it did when I signed my second contract after my 3rd year, and then not knowing it would go into 16 years. I never dreamt that, but that was my thinking going to the NFL, and with the job of being a long snapper that surprised my wife.
So you talked about playing 16 years in the NFL. So I want to ask you about a specific day in your career, which is September 27th, 2010, when you beat Steve McMichael's most games played record.
Yes.
What did that mean for you? As a long, because it's not many times you see a long snapper breaking, franchise records. So what did something like that mean to you during that period of time?
Well, first off, that was my wife's birthday. So I do remember that. But it was something, so maybe I'll make this try to shorten up the story. But as a player, pregame, we would always get the game day program in our locker. And I'd always sit there and open it up and you just read the same stuff over and over, the Bears records, longevity records, Walter Payton's records, all that stuff. And I'm like, I will never, ever be in this book for any of these things. And then I'm like, wait a second, longevity, that's the only thing I could ever beat. So as it got closer into that day, as it got closer, I was like, wait a minute, I could play 192 games and beat Steve McMichael's record or whatever it was, 91, whatever it was. And when that happened, it was a dream come true. I was like, all right, I'm going to make the Bears record book. My mom and dad, or my dad was in town, my brother and everybody. But that was just one where I was like, I did something I didn't think I would ever do. And it was a pretty cool moment.
Speaking of dreams come true, it feels like Devin Hester is kind of a dream come true for the Chicago Bears. How'd the vibe in the special team meetings change once he came onto the scene, and what were they like beforehand and after he was in those meetings?
Well, we were always pretty good. We were always very competitive. We always kind of did the right thing. Dave Toub was a great coach, Mike Sweatman before, and Keith Armstrong. But I just remember seeing Devin Hester when he got on the practice field for the first time. And, you're not doing live tackling. So he's catching the ball, he's returning it, just kind of wiggling through. And then he'll get to a sideline and then somebody will try to will chase him and try to take an angle. And when he put on the afterburner and just the angle went away, it was gone. I was like, holy cow, this guy is that fast. And I think all of us saw that and we're like, all right, this guy is special. He's dynamic. And what I loved about him, guys, he worked his butt off on, just the little things of being able to catch the perfect ball from a kickoff to a punt. And he was a great pro, but we knew once we got him, we had something special. And guys wanted to be on the field when he was on the field. So guys were trying to be on the punt return team. Guys were trying to get on the kickoff return team. Charles Tillman, if you guys, starting corner, should be a future Hall of Famer. He I think was the left corner on the punt return team because he always wanted to be out there with Devin. And that says a lot for a starting corner that wanted to be out there.
I think it does say a lot because you see a lot of Devin's touchdowns and you see Urlacher, Briggs, Tillman, Hillenmeyer, all those guys leading the way for him because just being on the field with someone like that has got to be, without a doubt, the most fun. Another guy you were on the field with that was an absolute legend, you mentioned earlier, Robbie Gould. At what moment did you realize that Robbie was the real deal? Because you've been on the record and saying when he came in, he was raw, but you could see something. At what point did you realize that Robbie was going to be the real deal like he is today?
I can't recall the day or time, But I think the story I've told about him being raw when he came in with the 7 kickers for the Tuesday tryout, the ball just came different off his foot. You know, it hit a little higher, it spun a little better, but he was still raw from college. And there's no specific day I can give you, but I just know that guy and how hard he worked. That's why he is as good as he is now. I think it's just that work ethic, that raw ability, and how much he cares about his craft is why he is so good. But I can't remember the specific day or time like that. But it took a little time. It cultivated, but you know, he started to hit some kicks. But and then that's the thing with kickers. You make one, you make another, you make it. It takes some time to kind of build that resume, and that's what Robbie did. He kept making bigger kick after bigger kick.
You just mentioned, I'm going to bounce around a little because this is so damn cool.
Oh, no worries, man.
So you mentioned Devin Hester and obviously opening up all the possibilities for the special teams. One play specifically that I wanted to touch on was the reverse that he and Johnny Knox pulled off against Green Bay. Was it Coach Toub's idea, or was it their idea to kind of have that reverse in place? Because it was perfect.
It wasn't a reverse. So
well, it was a fake reverse, wasn't it?
Yes. No, this is what it was. So the punter for Green Bay at that time, I forgot who it was. Was it Tim Mastay, I think? So when you're in the plus 50 area, which means the ball's like beyond the 50 and they're going to kick it close to the goal line, he did that pooch kick, that end over end, like not soccer style kick, the flip flop kick, they kind of call it. And he did it 100% to the left, always to the left. His left, the return team's right. Well, Dave Toub came up with this. Said, all right, I'm going to put Johnny Knox in as the corner on the punt return team's right side, which means the kick is going to go to him. He's going to have Devin sprint to the opposite side of the field. So Devin went left. So everybody, you know, they're all week, all they're thinking about, cover Devin, cover Devin, cover Devin, not knowing that Tim Mastay's plus 20 or plus 50 kick is always going to go left. So Devin breaks the other way. Johnny Knox runs down there, tracks the ball. That was the hardest thing to do. And the crazy thing was Johnny did it great all during the week when we were practicing for it. So you knew you were comfortable with him doing it. So that's how it came about. It was Devin running to the other side. I'm telling you, all 10 except the punter ran, past the halfway point of the field to go towards Devin. Johnny Knox goes down there and catches it, and then they called a horrible penalty on Corey Graham. That was just horrible. It was wrong, and it's just too bad it worked. You know, he got to the end zone, but it wasn't a touchdown, unfortunately.
So you talked about a little earlier about how all these players, defensive players, wanted to be on special teams. With, you know, having a coach like Dave Toub, who now is super successful in Kansas City, you know, you had a special teams room of you, Robbie Gould, Brad Maynard, you know, Hester. So what was it like to be in that unit?
Oh, man. I was just telling the story the other day that because we were talking on the pre and post game on the Score about Matt Nagy's comments about these current Bears of like, he's still hard on this offense, saying you're not playing good enough. Well, Dave Toub was that way all the time. He was always hard on us. And the story I was telling the other day on the radio was that we would have a game where Devin would return a kickoff or a punt return for a touchdown. Brad Maynard would net 43 yards. Robbie would go 3 for 3 on field goals. And Dave Toub would still coach you up hard, every little detail. And we'd all look at each other in the meetings like, come on, coach, we just kicked their ass on special teams. Take it easy. But he would not do it. And that's just kind of the way the room was. And we embraced it. And we, you know, respected Coach Toub and the way he coached and knew how good he was. Just like that example I gave you of dialing up that play for Johnny Knox. But we had a really special room where everybody cared. Everybody wanted to play with Devin. And we wanted to be the best. Dave Toub had a ranking system. I guess it was Rick Gosling, who's the Dallas, whatever the Dallas paper is. He would put out the rankings every year, and Dave Toub figured out how he did the rankings. So every week we know where we ranked within all 32 teams, and our goal was to be top 5 at least throughout the year. And at the end of the year, we want to be number 1, and we ended up being that a couple times with Dave.
Yeah, that's really cool. So when you started off with the Bears, you had as your head coach Dick Duran, and then Lovey came after.
I started Wannstedt.
Oh, Wannstedt.
Oh, wow.
Wannstedt was my rookie year. Yeah, I had 1 year of Wannstedt. Yep.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
So that makes it even more interesting now. So with guys like Wannstedt and Duran, and then transitioning to the culture that Lovey built, what was the biggest difference you saw in the shift of culture? Because you had, you know, Urlacher and some of those early guys on the team who were there for the transition. So what kind of did you see shift?
Yeah, no, it's not that you're right, because the Wannstedt was my rookie year, and you just keep your mouth and eyes open, or you keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. You're just doing, looking around like, all right, what is this? But you could tell the guys were kind of done listening to Coach Wannstedt. That those guys were just kind of done, and that's what happens when most coaches move on. And I figured that out as I got older. Well, when Coach Duran came in, everybody bought right in. He was that kind of guy. He's a leader of men. We respected the heck out of him. He had a very good coaching staff. So that transition from him to Lovey really didn't have to change that much. All it did is got stronger because Jerry Angelo brought better guys in the locker room that fit more into our culture, with the leaders of Olin Kreutz and Brian Urlacher were kind of the two guys in there that everybody followed. And it just made it so easy when you had Brian Urlacher, who's the most humble superstar I've ever been around. And you had Olin Kreutz, who's one of the best, if not the best leader I've ever been around. And the culture that we had with Lovey, he allowed us to police ourselves, and I think we all took respect in that. And it was just a fun place to be. We worked hard, we played hard, and Lovey did a great job of building a great culture there.
At what point did you feel you had earned respect yourself as a leader in the locker room, being a long snapper? Like, how long did it take you to really feel like you would earn that respect from the teammates?
That was my thing, as I always wanted to earn my teammates' respect. Everybody should want to do that daily. That's just the way it should be. Do your job right, speak up when you get older and you have something to say that's valuable. But the one thing I did that I think helped me a lot was, I played O-line, started O-line in college. I came into the pros, was kind of like a practice squad O-lineman while I long snapped. So I was in O-line meetings. So I went to O-line meetings for 13 of my 16 years, and was always out there for walkthroughs. As I got older, I would line up as like the Mike linebacker in walkthroughs. That's kind of the guy that could help. They'd show us cards and I would help line guys up. I watched video of our opponents to make sure I could help do that. So I just tried to do everything right every day. And I think that just helped get my teammates respect. That's just what I want to do, is make sure they respected me and saw that I was working hard and cared.
How did you maintain longevity during your career?
One is being a long snapper. Take as many hits, which is great. But then the rules changed as well. Remember, they used to be able to line up head up over you and do a double push with a big, we would do it with Big Cat Williams and Brian Urlacher pushing him right over the long snapper. So that was hard. So I was a lot bigger when I was younger. And then they changed that rule. That helped my neck a lot. And then I just got healthier. As you get older, you're seeing all these athletes now eat so much cleaner, eat better, take care of their body, train better. And that's probably the biggest thing I did do, is my wife helped me with that. She has a healthy food blog, and she's I don't call her a health nut. It's just like a lifestyle nut, just changing your lifestyle to be better and cleaner. And we did that, and that helped me to be able to, call it quits when I was 39 years old. And it really started probably when I was 31, 32. And that helped a whole ton. Yeah.
So going back to those rules before they had the rule of putting someone over the head of the long snapper, did you ever have an oh shit moment pre-snap because of anyone you saw in front of you, or if there was just, you felt like it was going to be blocked, or if you just knew there was like a miscommunication on timing? Was there ever that moment? Because you didn't really, I don't think ever, you say you did once, but botch a snap.
I did.
You say you did once. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But how many times did you ever really have that oh shit moment with that 10-second period between going from the huddle to the ball?
Well, not during that time, because being in Chicago long enough, the weather and all that stuff, it still sucked, but I always felt like I was prepared for it. But I can change the word oh shit to oh spit. So we're playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Warren Sapp is lined up over me, and he always played with just a little bit of chew in. So I think this was maybe our second or third field goal, and he knew our cadence. It would be like hot right, set. And as soon as I hear the word set, I'd snap the ball. Well, I hear this hot right, and I hear this, he's pulling up this giant loogie. And I'm like, that's somebody about to spit on me. And right before the set call, he spits all over my hand. This is when I was younger. Yeah, this is probably my third or fourth year. All over my hand. Fortunately, the snap's good. We make the kick. But I remember it's another NFL moment, like, oh my God, Warren Sapp just spit on my hand. How cool is that? And it had little flecks of his dip all over my hand when I'm walking off the field. Like, all right, we just, I was all excited. We made the field goal, successful snap. But yep, Warren Sapp just brought one up from deep and just went all over my left hand.
Who was the hardest person you had to block, and who was your favorite guy to go up against?
Gilbert Brown was an absolute beast up in Green Bay on field goals. I mean, he's, the grave digger. That guy was just powerful, big, low. He was very, very hard. There's a couple guys I enjoyed going against. Was Willie Young, who became a Bear. Mm-hmm. He was a terror. He was played for Detroit. And there's the week before we play them. I don't know, we're on Zoom, but he used to line up over the long snapper and like dance around and then wait to this and just try to run you over. And the week before we played him, there's one of him like doing a flexing thing right before the snap and then goes at the snapper and hits him. So I remember running out there and I kind of knew him because we had trained with the same trainer before. And I run out there and I'm like, Willie, you're not going to flex on me, are you? And he just starts laughing. That's all we talked about all week was that dumb flex thing you did. He said, oh, trust me, I caught a bunch of shit from my teammates for doing it. But he was fun, but he was hard, man. That was one that, you have to snap, protect, and cover. Him, I worried more about protection than I did the snap. And he was difficult, but he was fun. We would laugh, but he would try to run me over. And but it was like, two brothers going at it or two friends going at it. And nobody got hurt. And thank God I never gave up a blocked punt or had a bad snap with him over me. So he was fun. He was a lot of fun.
Who was the toughest returner that you ever had to cover or try to tackle that wasn't named Devin Hester?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because we used to, Dave Toub, we also had a point system that made us compete against each other in special teams rooms. So if you had block points, tackle points, missed tackle, you get minus stuff. Well, when we played the toughest returners, he would always put up swarm points. So that meant everybody had to get to him and at least touch him. If you touched him, you got a point. So there were a few guys we did that against, and now I'm drawing a blank who we would have done that. I know earlier in my career, Dante Hall, but that was before Dave Toub. We played them once. Well, Deion Sanders, I got to tackle Deion Sanders. That's one of my highlights in the NFL. Yeah. See, against Dallas, me and Mike Brown are running down. This is back when I was younger and could run. And, Deion didn't like to get hit or anything. So we're out in front, and he just kind of slides down right in front of us, and I landed on him first. And that was another moment where I touched him. I'm like, oh my God, that's Deion Sanders. And I was like, I just tackled Deion Sanders. It's considered a tackle. It's not a form tackle or anything like that, but it goes in the stats as, one next to my name, tackle, and it was Deion Sanders. But I can't think of any other ones that we always played. Sorry about that. I can't think of anybody offhand that was the swarm points. But yeah, I think it's just because we had Devin Hester. Nobody really scared us.
What did you prefer doing in a snapping situation, a field goal or a punt? And was the technique a little different?
Field goal. Yeah, it's good. Field goal for me was easier. Some reason I just had a natural ability of being able to get the laces and the consistent speed to be able to get the laces forward. Plus, it was only 8 yards. And then Brad Maynard, all my holders that I had, Adam Podlish as well, and Brad Maynard were so good. So if I missed a little bit, they made it look good. And we worked so hard at it that it just kind of became easy. And then especially when they changed the rules, it became a lot easier because it couldn't line up and hit you. Punt to me was just more difficult, especially being in Chicago where the wind and weather was. I hated wind. My hotel room in Chicago overlooked Soldier Field. We used to be at the old Chicago Hilton Towers. And as I got older, I got a better room and it overlooked Soldier Field. And I remember every morning getting up and looking out the window and be like, oh no, the flags are moving hard today. This isn't going to be fun. Then if you saw the flags just kind of laying limp, you're like, all right, that's not going to be too bad of a day. But field goal for sure was a lot easier for me.
What was your favorite Packer game that you played in?
There's a lot, but I got to say the one December 25th, 2005. It was the day after my daughter was born. So she was born on Christmas Eve. My wife was supposed to be due a week later, and we had the family at the house. And my wife is sitting on one of those exercise balls with, the big belly. And she looks over at me and she's like, I think I'm going into labor. And I'm like, oh man, I got the Packers tomorrow. So luckily it's only a 3-hour ride, but obviously it's my daughter's more important, but also I'm thinking like, what do I do? Cause there's no backup long snapper on the roster. And my wife and I kind of talked about it, and she willed herself. She's like, I will not be pregnant around the game. Don't worry. And I'm like, I won't be giving birth around the time of the game. So we look at each other, and this was about 2:00 in the afternoon. So I call our head trainer, Tim Bream. I'm like, Tim, Tamara's going into labor. What do I do? I'm going to the hospital with her. Hopefully she can pop this kid out and I can get up to Green Bay, because I was supposed to be going to Hallis Hall to get on the bus, because we used to take buses up there instead of flying, because it was easier because we stayed in Appleton. And he's like, listen, go to the hospital, make sure this kid comes out before game time, and we'll have one of our team doctors drive you up there before the game. So luckily my daughter was born, I think at 8:35. I got zero sleep. I left the next morning I think we had a 3:25 game. Maybe that's what it was. Left the next morning at like 9 a.m. and got up there to the locker room before the team did. I got about 15 minutes of sleep on the training table, and we played the game and won, which was awesome. And I think we won. Did we win the division that game? No, maybe we won the division that game too. I can't remember, but that was probably my greatest Packers moment, just because all that was rolled into one. And then, another one, 2006, when we went up there and beat them 26-0. And that's when we're like, all right, guys, all this talk during training camp, we thought we were good. We are good. Another Brian Robinson blocking the field goal in 1999. The game you talked about, September 27, 2010, when I broke the McMichael's record, that was a Packers game. So I have a lot of good ones and a lot of fun memories, and that was fun. Those were good times.
Were you, I don't want to say fearful, but who was a bigger threat is the way I'll put it? Aaron Rodgers led Packer teams or Brett Favre led Packer teams?
Aaron Rodgers, because early on, Lovie Smith had Brett Favre's number. He couldn't figure out that cover two, and then Urlacher, roamed that middle, and we picked him off quite a bit. So I would say Aaron Rodgers. That guy, they're both special. They're both Hall of Famers. They're both great, but Aaron Rodgers had our number, I think, more than Brett Favre. Brett Favre, with the cover two defense and the shell we played of allowing him to kind of dink and dunk, guys were able to break on the ball and make more plays. And I think also we were a little younger, a little more agile back then with those guys back there in the back with Lance Briggs and Charles Tillman. So yeah, mine would be Aaron Rodgers was tougher.
So you mentioned you were talking about field goal and punt, and you mentioned the Warren Sapp and other guys that you went up against. Are there any memorable conversations that you had pre-field goal or pre-punt with the opposition? Like you mentioned the Willie Young one, but when I was in high school, at least I just remember a couple games where you could tell the score was getting out of hand, and you would just get really chippy at the field goal, and everyone would start jaw jacking. It didn't matter. Like, we're just here for a field goal. Like, nobody really wants to bang heads here, but we're all just going to chirp at each other. What about you?
No, I mean, I wouldn't really listen to him, but there is one moment. Ryan Wetnight was a former Bears tight end who went to Green Bay. That's another Green Bay Packers story. So he's lining up head over me on the punt, and he's the guy that I have to block all game, and he knows our calls, knew all of our calls. So, like, if we call it, this is how easy football is. This is how easy punt team is. If you call red, that means the center's going right. If you call blue, that means the center's going left. So we went in the game, and I had talked to the personal protector. I forgot who it was, but I was like, listen, if he starts calling out our calls and they start rushing towards our calls, we're going to have to switch up. Red might be left, blue might be right. So just to mess with them. So we went red. I think I slid right, and they ran a rush, and luckily I picked it up. And I get out there the next time, and I told the PP, I was like, go ahead and call it early. Call blue early, whatever. He's like, blue. And then Ryan Wetnight starts calling out what they're going to do. I go, maybe I'm not going left, Ryan. He goes, no, you're going. And then he started double thinking. Well, then I went right when they called blue, and we picked up the twist and the rush and all that stuff. He's like, oh, man. All right, which way? He couldn't figure out which way we were going to go. So that's a conversation that happened within the game, like during the snap and stuff like that. Was fun. But yeah, it's just never fun going against a buddy either, especially when they know your calls.
So I want to ask you about the Super Bowl season, and specifically, what was the vibe coming into camp with the team? What was the expectation? And obviously, the Bears had that defense at the time, but like, what was the realistic expectation for that season? Was it Super Bowl or bust, or was it just to yes? I mean, so that 2005 season, we knew we were coming into our own. We knew those young guys were getting pretty good. The defense, especially. Offense, we didn't play great. But going into that training camp, there was just talk of like Super Bowl. And Lovie started it. He would say, hey, listen, guys, this is a Super Bowl winning team. We are good enough. We are ready now. Let's go. So we started believing it. And it's just started cultivating and all that. And we had a left guard, Reuben Brown, who came over from the Buffalo Bills. And he started the mantra, we're going to Space Mountain. You guys remember Ric Flair and all his. So he called the Super Bowl basically Space Mountain. And he would always do that saying. And
So it was just like, hey, we're going to Space Mountain. We're going to Space Mountain. We're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to the Super Bowl. And we believed it. We get on the buses after games. We'd win and be like, all right, guys, that's another one. We're going to the Super Bowl. And the next thing you know, we're down in Miami and we're at the Super Bowl. But it was just something that we were confident in ourselves, but also knew to work hard, that it's just not given to you. We knew we had the roster and the talent, but we also would talk amongst ourselves, like, hey, we're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to go to the Super Bowl. And unfortunately, we went to the Super Bowl, but we should have said more, we're going to win the Super Bowl.
So that kind of leads me to my next question about a playoff moment, which is the 2010 NFC Championship. And that was kind of like the last chance at, a Super Bowl with that team. What do you think kind of went wrong after that? Because there were offensive pieces that came with, later on, or then and later on with Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte, all those guys were kind of coming into their own. So what do you think happened after that season?
I think after that, we got rid of Olin Kreutz, which I thought was unfortunate and dumb. So you lost a big leader in that regard. And then that kind of fractionalized, we lost a lot of leadership. Let's put it that way. And guys, a little bit more of this, when I'm doing that, is thumbs to myself, a little bit more of me stuff than team stuff. But then we got it going again in 2012. And unfortunately, we started out 7-1 and then ended up 10-6 and Levy gets fired. But I think that was probably one of the biggest. It was a bad decision to let Olin Kreutz go. They should have paid him, I think, whatever the X amount of dollars they were short on. They should have given the money and kept it there. But you started to get some of the guys who they weren't bad guys, they weren't bad teammates, but it just the closest of the locker room just kind of split up a little bit. It wasn't as tight as it had been in the past.
Did you ever consider leaving the Bears, or did you want to be a Bear for life?
I wanted to be a Bear for life. So I always told my agent, and I got lucky being a long snapper, and all these guys will sign 5-year contract extensions. And when you do that, you can maximize your signing bonus because it can be prorated per year. And for a long snapper, that's not a whole lot of money on the cap, but it's a whole lot of money in everyday terms. So what I always told my agent, I said, listen, just try to get me to be one of the top 4 to 5 paid long snappers in the league. I'm not going for the biggest bonus. I don't need the biggest bonus this year. I just want longevity. And so there were a couple years, maybe 2 of the contracts I could have tried to go for more, and maybe they would have said no and I would have gone somewhere else. But what was great is they came to me every time and said, listen, we want to get a deal done. But I think they knew that I wasn't going to try to go get the highest long snapper signing bonus. They knew I was going to say, hey, give me where I should be in the top 5, paid long snappers in the league.
Do you think that's something that's undervalued in sports now and is missing, with players not staying with one team for their careers, or do you respect when they're just trying to maximize the amount of money they can get on the open market?
That's a great question. I think it's all personal. You know what I mean? If there's an opportunity to go break the bank and get just true generation skipping wealth, I think you got to do that. I mean, the earning potential now especially is so high. But if you're a guy like me or in a situation where it's not going to break the bank, you're not going to break the bank, but you can still stay at that same place. I think it's smart too. I've adopted Chicago. I call it my hometown now. I've been in Chicago longer than I ever was in Atlanta. I love the people here, but it's a hard question to answer. But with me in my position, I think I did the right thing. And especially where we stood with the signing bonus money and where I was, because my wife and I talked about it. If you got to move, what are moving costs? All that kind of stuff. You got to think about packing up the home or rebuying a home or selling your home for a loss or trying to rent here, do that. So, that went into the analysis as well. But that's a good question. I just think it depends on your situation. And then if there's a chance just to make that just killer cash, you got to go get it.
How did you get your introduction to 670 The Score and everything once you'd retired fully?
All right. So, my last year and a half, I did the Bears All Access show with Zach Zaidman. I think it's a Thursday night show that comes on every week on The Score. So that kind of got me introduced to Mitch Rosen, who's the station boss, and I guess he liked how I sounded. And when I retired, I thought I was going to spend. My wife and I talked about, let's spend 6 months, 8 months. Let's go live somewhere fun. Let's go like to Australia, just rent some little place, something like that with my daughter. So we were thinking about just checking out for a little while and then re-engaging, figure out what was next. But we're actually on a road trip out west, going to South Dakota and all that stuff, and thinking that was kind of going to be the start of all these travels we wanted to do. And I get a call from Mitch Rosen. He's like, you're on my list to possibly take Dan McNeil's spot next to Matt Spiegel. And I'm like, for real? So I was like, all right, I got to talk to an agent. So this guy, I hired an agent. I talked to him. He's like, no, he's serious. You're on the list. And I'm like, all right, who else is on the list? And he gave me some names. I'm like, there's no way I'll get this job. Well, those other guys said they didn't want it. So it trickled down the list to me. And he's like, hey, we got to meet. Would you want this job? And I'm like, you've got to be a complete idiot to say no. Right? I mean, who gets I call it like a seat at the table. That's Chicago sports media. That's the second, third largest media market, 9-1 slot with, Matt Spiegel. And I'm like, come on, let's talk this out. So I talked to Mitch and I'm like, I'll give it a go. And I said, you got to give me 6 months, because I don't know if this is something I want to do, because I never thought this was something I was going to do. Would I be good at it? Would I enjoy it? And as you know, I only lasted 6 months, and I just, it wasn't for me. And I told Mitch in the beginning, like, I don't know if this is going to be for me. And as it went along, about 4.5, 5 months into it, I think it was about Christmas time, we were on a little family vacation, and I had a cold beer, and I'm sitting outside by myself. I'm like, listen, I can't do this anymore. I've got to let him know. I can't bring the passion that sitting next to Matt Spiegel does. Lawrence Holmes, Dan Bernstein, those guys, every day, they have just a true passion about all sports, everything. And I have a passion for football, played high school basketball, love basketball, but I could care less about talking about the Bulls on a Wednesday morning after they play the Trailblazers like that. But Spiegel's over there like, oh my God, did you see that? I'm like, yeah, I saw it, but I don't really care that much. So I felt bad sitting in that position and having that job and not bringing the passion those guys did. But it was awesome. It's great to do now what I'm doing. And it's an experience that there's thousands of people that want that job, and I got lucky to get it. And I thank Mitch Rosen, every day for that. It was a fun experience, but I'm glad I'm not doing it anymore every day. Not telling you guys not to do it, but if you have the passion for sports, seriously, it is awesome. It is a dream job. It is super fun. I got to work with two great producers, and it was fun to meet those guys and get friendships. But I just couldn't bring that passion that these guys do. And obviously you guys doing what you're doing now, which is super cool. And that's one reason why I want to talk to you guys.
Thank you. A question I have for you is, in your playing career and in your media career, you've been immersed as a Chicago Bear and have been a representative of, the franchise and being a former player of the franchise. What does being a Chicago Bear mean to you?
Everybody goes back to being the charter franchise, to, George Halas, being the first franchise in the NFL. It's, I grew up in Atlanta, and the Atlanta Falcons were not good. So I tried to adopt other teams. Like, I was a Joe Montana fan. And then I was 10 years old in 1985 when those Bears came along. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are awesome. They're all characters. I love them. So I kind of fell in love with the Bears when I was around 10 years old, and followed them on since. And then to get drafted to them, and then to really get immersed into the history of the Bears and know all the great players before, what the Bears have meant to the NFL. And just to say I was a part of it, and then be able to say I was a part of it for 16 years is beyond a dream come true. It was just something that's very cool. And I love telling people that, I'm going to phrase this the right way. I love telling people I played for the Bears, but not bragging, if that makes sense. I'm proud to say I played for the Bears within the NFL over the other franchises.
So speaking of the Bears today, what's your current read on them? Offensively, defensively, special teams, give it all. They're 5-1.
All right. Well, I think we all see the same thing, right? And I think even Matt Nagy talks about it, is that the defense is awesome. They started out good, and they had the potential to be awesome, and they're getting there, man. Last week was pretty strong performance by everybody, from the D-line, linebackers, and the secondary. But the offense is the problem. That's just they don't have it. And part of the reason is, Olin Kreutz and I talk about it all the time, and he's brought it up numerous times, that they just don't have the talent. If you look at the big pie of cap space, it all is on the defensive side, right? So that offensive side just doesn't have the high paid guys. And that's part of it. They haven't invested in the offense. These guys are trying hard, but that's just who they are. Like Charles Leno is ranked, I think, the 19th or 20th tackle in the NFL. That's what he is. Bobby Massey's probably the same for the right side. That whole line is just right there in the middle. They have one great player in Allen Robinson. I think David Montgomery is a pretty good running back in that offense. I think he's very good at breaking tackles and all that. I like him. But, Anthony Miller, I was reading on Twitter today, he's upset at the fans because they're all over him. But he's a guy they traded up to get as a second round pick. And he can't be – he's just not consistent. So just they're not consistent. The O-line play is not consistent. They missed on Mitch Trubisky, and Nick Foles is doing an okay job. But that's who he is. He's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. They just don't have any great players over there to be difference makers. And then special teams wise, Chris Tabor was my assistant for many years in Chicago under Dave Toub. I have a lot of respect for him. I know how he teaches those guys. I know what's being taught, and they're playing pretty well. Cordero Patterson's the best kick returner in the NFL, has been for a few years. It hurts they don't have Tariq Cohen as a punt returner. They need to find one there, but they've been very consistent, in covering kicks, and Pat O'Donnell's doing a great job. And Cairo Santos is the special teams player of the week this week for that 55-yard field goal, which is awesome, which is great to see, because kickers, they need that confidence. Like I said, you start building your resume by more and more kicks you make, and then you just feel more confident. And I think he's there right now.
So where do you see this team going by the end of the season? Do you see them being a real contender, or do you think that they're going to fall short?
Right now, the way I see it, they're a playoff team, and then they fall short. It kind of reminds me of the 2005 season. We had a great defense. The offense wasn't there yet. We had a rookie quarterback and Kyle Lurton leading us through most of the season. And, we got to the playoffs and we found out, hey, our offense wasn't good enough, and our defense can only take you so far. You need all three phases, but you definitely need the offense to raise it up a little bit. And right now, I don't see that happening, but you never know. Maybe they start clicking. Maybe some of these playmakers, Mooney and the other guys and Cole Kmet start raising their play and becoming, stars and making a difference during the games.
Fast forwarding to the offseason, where do you see the Bears' first priorities being? Do you see it as tackle? Obviously, the Mitch project is over, and they're going to have to find a successor. So a quarterback in the first couple of rounds. Weapons, like you've just said, they don't have the pure talent. Where do you see them attacking first in the draft? First 3 rounds, free agency, you name it.
I would like to see offensive line. We never, we had Olin Kreutz we paid, which is great, but we never gave other guys the big, we take that back. We got the year we went to the Super Bowl, we went out and paid for John Tate. We got him, right? Fred Miller we paid for Reuben Brown. You got Olin Kreutz and Roberto Garza, and they invested in the offensive line. That helped us be able to run the ball, and it helped us, have a nice run during those times. So I would like to see the O-line get solidified, especially now with the game too. It's changed. Back then we ran the ball more. Now you're passing as much as you are, especially with Matt Nagy. You need that protection up front for those quarterbacks to read and dissect the information. So that would be my number one thing. If there's a quarterback in the late first round, second round, hopefully they're picking late, that you feel has a tremendous upside that slides down there, you might have to go get him. But one thing that I'm a little upset at Ryan Pace is when he came in, he said he's going to draft a quarterback every year, right? No matter what and he hadn't done it. He has nobody he's developed. We still have Tyler Bray, who he
protects Tyler Bray every week in hope that he might turn into something good.
Well, he's just not, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how he still has him. Why hasn't he spent a 6th or 7th or 5th round pick on a quarterback to see if you can find something out there? I don't know if there is one, but do what you said you were going to do.
What would you grade Ryan Pace's job leading the Bears front office over his tenure?
A B. 2018 was fun. Last year they fell behind, obviously, I wouldn't call it, what they go, 8-8 or whatever. Played a Minnesota team that didn't play any of their players, but and then right now they're 5-1. So he's doing an okay job, but I would just give him a B. A simple answer is a B, because they're winning, but they're not making a difference in the playoffs yet.
Do you see them making any moves this season to try to get themselves over a hump, whether it's like today, the Bills just released Quentin Spain, the left guard. See them going after someone like that, or maybe trading Mitch? I don't know. I'm just speaking off the top of my head. Do you see them making any move?
I mean, if you trade Mitch, you've got to get something high. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's got the value right now to get that. So maybe, I don't know how you're going to do that, because I wouldn't have a problem if they traded him, but I want something back that's, like a 3rd rounder. I need something, up there. I mean, being the number 2 overall pick in the draft. And then the guy from Buffalo, I want to do some more research on him because he looks interesting. I was scrolling through Twitter today trying to read up on him a little bit, but if they feel that uncomfortable with that left guard position, you've got to go get somebody. You've got to. I mean, you can't go through the season trying to rotate 2 bad guys to see if you can find a hot one during the week. So I would not have a problem with that at all.
And the final question I have, one of the hottest topics for all of Bears, is the Allen Robinson situation. Do you think it would be in the Bears' best interest to move on midseason or wait till the end of this year to get something figured out? Because it really seems like both parties are not on the same page on coming back together. Seems there's been a disconnect on the numbers on the contract extension. Do you think it would be best for the Bears to move on midseason, try to maybe trade him to someone that might want him, or is being in this 5-1 position kind of strapping them down and not really allowing them to do that, because then it kind of shows that they're not really full intent and purposes trying to contend?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. I think you answered your question with where they are right now. If they were 2-3 or 1-4 or something like that, I would say, okay, maybe you do, and it's time. Mitch wasn't the right guy. Allen Robinson might be able to, save some money by not signing him for the future. But that's a tough one. I think it's just unfortunate. I would love to know the numbers, how far apart they are. You know what I mean? Like the Olin Krug situation. I knew they were pretty close, but they stuck by their guns, so we're not signing them. But that's a tough one. I think right now, being 5-1, you got to keep him. He's your best player. I mean, he's their offense. So hopefully they can get something done. He deserves every penny he gets because he's that good. He's better than I thought he would be. I mean, maybe coming from Jacksonville, I didn't know much about him. And coming off the ACL, you didn't know much about him that injured year. But that's a good question. But right now, 5-1, it's tough to get rid of him. You can't do anything.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it, and we have a lot of listeners who are Bears fans, so we know they're going to love it and they're going to love the stories. Jack, do you want to close this thing out?
Of course, guys. You can find our podcast on all platforms, Spotify, Apple. We're also on YouTube. You know the drills. Not the same time, same place. We will see you guys later.